I believe in rules and traditions and playing our part. But there is something else. I believe in love.
Tell me how you got the parts. Did you by any chance audition for other parts like Mrs. Hughes or Mary Crawley?
No, it was always Anna for me, really. It was just such a page turner, I couldn't put it down. And they said that they're thinking of you for the character of Anna. And it was definitely the character that I most connected with when I read the script for me.
So I came in, I must admit I had my hair put up and everything. I practically came in costume. I did 2 scenes on tape and I got it and they never saw anybody else. I know. Isn't that amazing? It's taken me 40 years to get to that situation, but it was worth it.
I joined in the 4th episode and the show was already up and running and filming at the time when I went in for it. I was only hired for 3 episodes. I don't know whether Julian knew exactly what Branson's role was going to be. I think a lot of us would agree that when Julian sees what happens on screen, he then writes for what people's strengths are, or the strengths within the stories that seem to jump out. I was asked to come back to the 2nd series, but I was still only recurring until the 3rd, so I never knew what was going to happen. And there was a Bible, a Downton Abbey Bible of what was going to happen for the 3 series, and I remember we got hold of it on the 1st series, and nothing that was in that Bible ended up happening in the show. I think Matthew Crawley was supposed to end up with Sybil by the end.
And you left after the 5th season, and then was there a plan for you not to return, or you always were supposed to?
No, I was always going to come back. I didn't know when. It kind of feels like Branson spoke about leaving for 2 years, left for 5 minutes, and then went, Boston's full of the Irish coming back. But yeah, so I knew I was coming back, I just wasn't sure exactly when.
And Michael, you were an American director, pretty new to Downton Abbey, and you get to direct the finale. How did that happen?
I had met Liz Trubridge also, the angel of us all, and we just met through friends in London and were talking, and she was a fan of work I had done here, and I was a huge fan of the show, and even to the point that when we were talking about things, I was filling in pieces of character histories that she had forgotten. You know, one of the things we talked about was how differently the show is seen in the States versus in the UK, and how passionate people are about it here in a very different way than they are there. And she thought it would be interesting to have that perspective reflected in the making of it.
Alan, and you are unique in terms of the cast because you got to act first with the downstairs people and then with the Crawley family. Which was more fun? Which part of the role?
They are very different filming environments, genuinely. I feel a larger pressure when you're upstairs, just due to time constraints and also the location when you're shooting within Highclere Castle, which is Downton Abbey. There tends to be a more serious air. And then when you go to Ealing Studios, where a lot of the kitchen scenes were done, it's chaos. And it's mainly due to the chaotic actors who are there. But yeah, it was lovely to be able to do that crossover. And it was something that Julian said, that Branson became the tour guide through Downton, because a lot of the show you could almost see reflected in his eyes, because he was seeing it all for the first time as well and taking it in the same way that the audience was. But I have to say, I did miss the camaraderie of Ealing Studios when I moved upstairs. I always loved the scenes between Branson and Mary towards the end of the last 2 series.
Was there any way for them to end up together? This was one of the biggest speculations. Will they one day? No?
Yeah, I think it was always just a friendship, and then people kind of saw it as more. I mean, it'd be pretty embarrassing. Branson would kind of want to cast the net slightly further than the next sister. You know. I think it would have been kind of strange. And then, yeah, something happens to her. Edith, how you doing? Yeah.
If you're asking whether I'll regret leaving Downton, I will regret it every minute of every day.
In the final season, did you think, like opening the final script, that there will be something bad that will happen to the Bates?
I think everyone was on the same page, Julian, the producers, myself, the viewers, that I think it was time for Anna and Bates to find some happiness at the end. I think the viewers would have felt very shortchanged if Anna and Bates hadn't have found their bit of joy. It's been a long time coming.
Tell a little bit about the comedy and you being part of that.
My very favourite stuff of the entire thing was my scenes with Jim and with Phyllis when they were debating what kind of marriage they were going to have. I mean, they were golden scenes. They were a huge gift. And we had a ball, an absolute ball, shooting those.
First, was Violet always supposed to have the last word? Was that in the original final script, or that changed?
It was, and actually, when I was talking to Julian about it, he said, he struggled with it for a while, thinking, that he felt the pressure of the finale in many ways, and he said that he just thought, who should have the last line? What is? And he said, no matter who he thought about, he said he always came back to that it had to be Maggie, not because it was Maggie, but because the Dowager Countess really represented in the most historical, important way what that place meant. And even as it was changing over time, she was the watermark of what it had stood for at its high point. Actually, the most important things in that episode were pretty much the way they were delivered.
What changed? What changed
on his
in the
first
finale?
script? Well, it was sort of how things happened and exactly where and in what order. And there were things like with Branson and Henry's characters, understanding like that those two stories were kind of separate, and understanding that actually it was more interesting if those stories started to come together and become more inevitably one story. And it was sort of things like that, ways that instead of having every single person have their own separate resolution, how the resolutions could be more woven together, and that it would become more meaningful that way.
Any update on the movie? Have you heard anything new about what we're gonna have a movie one day?
I haven't really. The last I heard was there was a possible negotiation happening with Julian in relation to...
Oh, I've heard since then.
Oh, go on.
The rumour I heard from Phyllis Logan, who knows everything,
She does.
was that maybe he was possibly writing a script, which is what we need to happen to go on with the the conversation.
You wanted the last image from Downton Abbey to be Downton Abbey.
That is something I said to him, how I wanted to end it. I felt that was always the main thing. It's the name of the piece, it is the place, but also that everybody was inside it. And actually one of the things that did develop that wasn't in the original script, was them all singing Auld Lang Syne at midnight. The idea that you would hear them and know that everybody was inside it as you sort of pulled away. That's what you were leaving, sort of all of them as a group, rather than on any one person, or rather than upstairs or downstairs. It was sort of the whole conglomeration of it.